Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Retail Insider. Joining me today is Carrie Kirkman, who is president of Kirkman Consulting and executive director of Sympli. Thanks for joining us today, Carrie.
Thanks for having me, Mario.
Well, we're going to have a wide range of topics we're going to talk about here and about the retail industry. But let me just start by asking you, you've got a lot of background and many years in this industry, leadership roles and executive roles with Nine West, Global Brands Group, Sears Canada, Jones Apparel, Hudson's Bay, Liz Clairborne.
Yeah.
As you look at today's retail landscape, how would you describe what's happening in the retail world in Canada right now?
I think it's no surprise it's all about reinvention. I think it feels like it's definitely continued change, lots of stuff going on, lots of new things being tried, and it's kind of exciting, disruptive, but I think exciting at the same time. Good for consumers.
Is it a healthy time for the industry now? I mean, especially coming out of the last 2 years plus of COVID.
I think it's still a very challenging time because I think for more traditional retailers, understanding how things are really settling out after COVID, jury's still out. When are things gonna really feel like, or will they ever feel like they're going back to pre-COVID? I mean, I don't think things will ever go back to quote unquote pre-COVID because consumers have evolved. I think we all feel a little bit different about it, but really understanding new shopping patterns, what's changed, it still feels a bit like a ping pong ball. So it's definitely disruptive. I think it's hard. It has not been great for some players where I think their model is really under a lot of pressure, and it creates that disruption, creates opportunity for newness. So in the end, I think, as I said, I think in the end, good for consumers, not necessarily so easy and fabulous for the current players.
Well, let's talk. You mentioned the challenging times. Let's talk about some of those challenges. What are the major challenges you see that the industry has faced and it continues to face right now?
So, I mean, the obvious of COVID, which was, completely unpredictable and created, chaos really for the industry, for all ends of it, from end to end, from a supply chain point of view, obviously for brands, for retailers, for everybody. I think coming out of it, the issue of supply chain disruption has made things very, very difficult. So on one hand, you could say retailers may have wanted to take more of a position on product in order to protect themselves from some of those supply chain challenges. The downside of that is if the consumer didn't come back aggressively enough, was that creating inventory risks where now, retailers were sitting with too much inventory. So I think, all of this involves a little bit of a crystal ball. And for stores that had a good, call it merchandise hierarchy or structure, where they had a high blend of year-round product, that was fantastic. I mean, it might tie up some cash, but it was not risky from an external point of view. It's the safest place to be sitting heavy in inventory. If they had overinvested in fashion, I think that we'll continue to see some of the hits that the market will take on that, because packing that up and bringing that back out, last year's fashion is a lot less interesting. So and then the ones that had to take the markdown and just clear it, obviously we're going to see the impact on margins. So I think people are still trying to figure out how to navigate sort of being set up and ready to take advantage of customers when they're ready to come in and they're anxious to be able to finally shop for things aside from sweats and dressy sweats. And, so it's managing the expectation with still some ambiguity. And then obviously supply chain, which does feel like it's starting to regulate slightly. We're seeing that smooth out a little bit, but it's still not back to normal. And costs obviously very, very hard to
Mhm.
get in front of the impact.
I wanted to talk to you about inflation. Now, we can look at inflation on two different aspects, right? One is actually for the retailers themselves, costs of everything are going up,
Right.
to do business. And then, of course, the cost for the consumer is going up as well in almost everything that they're buying these days. What is that impact of inflation having on the retail industry?
So I definitely think it's going to create opportunities for people who are offering a more value message, but value and quality, because I still think, there's this idea of people, especially in a market like Canada, where that sort of middle is very much where the bubble of consumer behavior is.
Yeah.
In the end, if you've got less money to spend, and you have to make different choices. So I think that the retailers that are offering great value but still quality, there's an enormous opportunity coming down the pipe. And I think that, not to forget the quality piece, because disposable fashion, I think there's still, obviously, with what's going on in the world and climate change, etc., people are not ignoring the fact that their purchase decisions there's a cause and effect.
Yeah.
So it's balancing quality with price value and being very sensitive to that. Something may be more expensive, but if they can have it and wear it, I use an example of women's leggings. You can pay $100 for a pair of leggings, or you can pay $15 for a pair of leggings. But the $15 pair of leggings is probably going to have to be replaced every couple of months because it's going to pill, it's going to fade, it's going to fall apart. The $100 pair may in fact last 5 years. So in fact, it's really, understanding the value message is not only about being the cheapest on the market with quality. I think it's the true value message
Yeah.
that's going to be important to really play up for consumers. They make educated, smart decisions.
Okay. Now, one other thing, one other challenge I wanted to talk to you about, and it's something that the retail industry has faced over many, many years, is that whole issue of employment and jobs. And we know that not only retail right now, but many industries are facing these quote unquote labor shortages.
Yeah.
How bad is it out there for the retail industry, and what does the retail industry need to do now to combat that issue?
I mean, I wish I had all the answers for that, because that is obviously a very real and challenging situation. And I think it affects all tiers of retail, from the big guys, obviously very challenging, lots of unfilled roles, lots of opportunity. Um, I think there gets to a place of some kind of reckoning. I think some people are approaching this through trying to automate more processes so that they take that risk and variable out of the equation. I'm a big believer in the human part of business. And I think that, well-trained, engaged employees, it's impossible to replace them with anything automated. The challenge is, as you scale, harder and harder to deliver on that promise of that kind of quality interaction.
Yeah.
So I think we're still going to have to wait and see. I think that physical retail in many ways is being reimagined. And how does it play with online and self-serve? And I think that we're going to keep watching different test models happening over time.
Mhm.
But I don't think there's an immediate fix for this, because at the end of the day, supply and demand, and the jobs are available, and people are choosing not to take them right now. So I think some small retailers, I've heard that some very interesting sort of anecdotes about how owner operators are having to spend more of their time physically in their businesses and are seeing amazing lifts in the business because of it, versus outsourcing that part of so it's
Yeah.
interesting, affecting everyone differently, I think.
Do you think the industry needs to do a better job of promoting the fact that retail can be a career? Heck, you're a perfect example of that, right?
I'm a lover of it, absolutely. I do think that Canada in many ways has sort of framed retail as the job you do until you get a better job.
Yeah.
And other places we know all around the world, people have really very happy and successful careers in retail. So I think it is a shift. The economics are tricky, and it takes time to really make that shift, but it absolutely is where there is an opportunity. And I think it's just rethinking the current model for sure.
As you look into the coming years, Carrie, what are your thoughts about the future of retail? Are you positive about what's going to be happening in this industry?
You know what? I'm always a glass half full kind of person. So I look at change and disruption as opportunity always. Not always comfortable, but I think always in the end, things tend to move forward. And as things move forward, yes, there's collateral damage that's going to happen behind it. But I do think that it was time for retail to be a little bit more creative, and I do think things were a little stale for a while. So I am very optimistic. In the end, it's about serving the consumer and serving the consumer in the way the consumer chooses to be served.
And what do you think consumers want today from a retailer?
I think they want more transparency. They want to be able to trust the value message of where they're shopping. I think that's why some of these, new guys came in and were able to disrupt such traditional businesses, whether it's Warby Parker with glasses or it's Casper with mattresses, etc. The idea of being more straightforward with the business model. And I think that they want to shop how they want to shop, and they want that to feel seamless for them. So if they want to be in a physical store, theirs needs to be addressed if they go in a physical store. If they're shopping online, there's the value message of what they need online, whether it's just the convenience of it and the quick response. So I think, supply chain has to, in all sense, not just offshore into the country, but even how we move forward with our business models. It's tricky in a country like Canada, very large, low population, very expensive to try and be as nimble as some of our neighbors have been. But consumers are voting on what matters, and the people who figure this out are going to be the ones that win.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Let's talk a little bit about yourself. Now,
sure.
at the beginning, I mentioned a long list of companies and major retailers that you've been involved with. What got you into this industry initially?
I came by it in a kind of a random way. I actually 100 years ago actually used to model, and a very, very good client of mine, which was sort of the woman who ran the Alfred Sung business for Eastern Canada. I did a lot of work for her, and she always used to say, when you're done with your modeling silliness, you always have a job with me. Come and speak to me. And one day I called her, and literally, I think the following Monday I started, and I spent 8 years. Really, I think at that time, Alfred was at the top of the game in Canada. Beautiful taste, beautiful fabrics, just felt like I was introduced to the industry in the most beautiful way. And I really thrived. And she allowed me tons of rope. I was running her business for her for many of those years. And that really ignited this passion, which was this blend of the art and the creative with the business, and all of that wrapped up with consumer insights. So it's not just doing it for doing it, it's really trying to understand the value you can bring through that work. And I really loved that. So
And continue to love it,
I
obviously.
really do. I absolutely do. It's one of the few I have found. It's one of the few places where you can have a creative side, but absolutely have it completely validated by factual information. We say in retail, you get a report card every morning. So I like the fact that it's not just somebody's opinion whether you can do a good job or not, but actually the customer gets to vote every day. So for me, that was the right balance. I really loved it.
All right, super. Thanks a lot for joining us today,
It
Carrie.
was great.
Super. Thanks very much. And that was Carrie Kirkman, who is president of Kirkman Consulting and also executive director of Sympli. I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Retail Insider. Thanks for joining us today.